Utah is an exceptional place. A place of awe-inspiring splendor. A place of important cultural influence. A place of profound historical relevance. A place of tradition. A place of learning. A place of family. But Utah is also a place of unique challenges.
The people of Utah have always supported schools.
Everybody cares about education for their kids because they care about their kids.
My son is starting kindergarten this year, so education is something I think about a lot.
Education is very important to the future of Utah.
Without education, it's very hard to create new businesses, new technology, things that keep us competitive in a worldwide market.
When I look at the education problems facing Utah, they really are unique.
There's a saying that the good news is Utah has more children per capita than any other state. The bad news is Utah has more children per capita than any other state.
With our large families, the ratio between our breadwinners and our student population, Utah is the lowest funded per student state in the nation.
We have a lot of kids in our families, and almost all those kids go to public schools.
Statewide, we currently have 3% of our students attend private school. The national average is between 15 and 10%.
On average, our incomes are lower than other states. We have a high tax burden that is specifically dedicated to supporting education in the state of Utah.
As a member of the State Board of Education, I see that our student population is going to be growing by over 150,000 in the next 10 years.
That's a tidal wave of new kids that we've got to house and educate, find teachers to teach. It's a daunting task for public schools.
As we were winding up the affairs of the Salt Lake Games, I actually worked full-time as the project leader of the Employers Education Coalition, looking at these issues. What we found was really the nature of the coming crisis in the state of Utah, where we have a lot of children and we have relatively high taxes and low-paying jobs compared to the rest of the country.
We have all of the factors working against us. And if we have even a little bit of economic downturn, we're going to be facing major challenges in this state in education.
January 1986. Utah's economy is in distress. The state legislature struggles to rescue education dollars in an environment of plummeting tax revenues.
We called it Black Monday. It was the last Monday of the session in 1986. We got our revenue forecasts and they were down. They were down a lot. And the people who were up here had to make a hard decision. What do? They raised taxes, they cut budgets.
Not only does this pour salt on the open wound of an ailing economy, it sparks the largest taxpayer revolt in Utah history. Those dark days of the mid-'80s seem like ages ago. Strong economic growth during the 1990s allowed the state legislature to make historic investments in education and, at the same time, lower taxes. Despite such progress, the reality is that we are poised to fall back into many of the same difficulties we experienced in the past.
As an economist, the state of Utah in many respects looks quite similar to what it was in 1986.
When you take into consideration all the issues that we have to address, this is a point in time that provides us a very unique challenge.
We have to act now. We don't have the time and we don't have the luxury to hope that one day things would just change on its own.
I don't think we should discount some of the ideas and opportunities that are available, because the bottom line is we all truly want the very best possible education for each child.
Perhaps the best way to understand our challenge is to see it as a fraction. The simple relationship between the money we devote to education and the number of students in our education system. If the funding decreases, education suffers. If the number of students increases, education suffers. If the funding decreases and the number of students increases, well, then education in Utah is really in trouble.
We really do understand this fraction because it governs so much of what we actually have to do up here.
We don't really know what the future holds for the Utah economy. And so the question that is before us is, how do we prepare and plan to address these issues of significant increases in enrollment relative to the uncertainty we face in our economic future?
On the surface, Utah has two options: reduce education spending or increase taxes. With Utah's per student spending currently the lowest in the nation, it would seem that increasing taxes is our only choice. But the consequence of such a decision would almost certainly be a major tax increase.
Our home is our security, and you can only afford so much in taxation.
The fundamental problem is that Utah already has very high tax rates. We're in the top 10 in terms of tax rates in the country.
It just is not fair, and there's got to be another way to go about it.
Looking back to the fraction, imagine if we were to help funding increase while decreasing the number of students.
When we studied at the Employers Education Coalition, what we looked for is what can we do to improve education without increasing the tax burden. And one of the critical pieces of that was some form of voucher system.
With a voucher system, we can reduce the number of kids in the classroom, but we can leave more money for those who choose to have the quality education in our public school system.
For all the good things that the public ed system does, I think we have put an unrealistic burden on them by expecting them to be all things to all people. When we have the opportunity of letting students work with their families and choose a different setting, we're decreasing the numbers of students that are in the classroom in the public ed system. We're improving the amount of money that's in the public ed system. So when you think about who is benefited by these opportunities, who is not?
It's a win for the students, it's a win for the taxpayers, and it's a win for the educators as well.
Governor Huntsman campaigned on vouchers and has worked hard to get them through the legislature. Realizing how the influence of vouchers could create a win-win for our education and our economy is critical to our understanding of the issue.
Let's take a scenario where a student and a parent want to participate in a voucher program. The state will give them $2,000 in a voucher. They then contribute the rest of those funds to the education out of their pocket, and they can then attend a private school. What we then have as a state is $5,500 left in the public education system.
It's almost like a voluntary tax. And if a family is willing to take some of the pressure off of the state to pay to educate their child, I don't see that as anything but good for our public schools.
We've got to do more than just hope. Hope that we have a good economy. Hope that we have enough money for kids and for schools. We've got to make certain that we use the fraction for our benefit and try to do things that will protect our future.
If we get past the emotions, it's a purely economic issue. If we had enough money to do everything we wanted to do, there'd be no problems with doing what we want to do. With a voucher, it gives us a tool to contribute more money to public education.
I'm a product of public education myself. My 4 children have attended public schools, and yet I believe as an economist that the reality of the fraction speaks for itself. Vouchers provide the opportunity for us to better fund the educational needs of our children in the state of Utah.
We've got one education system, and we've got several facets, and we should be concerned with all of it, and they all should work together.
As we look to the next 20 years, we need to look at our systems in this state and adapt to our future. And I think vouchers is a great way to do that.
They'll spend $100 million on a plane, but we can't get vouchers to educate our kids.
Vouchers, they're really giving you a different way of looking at public education.
Utah is indeed an exceptional place, a place of tradition, a place of learning, a place of family. But Utah is also a place where we boldly face our unique challenges.